Hey everybody, thanks for clicking in to today's show. The theme this month is
romance.
And we are discussing Tayari Jones's novel, An American Marriage. And since marriage takes two, we are bringing in the male perspective with our special guest, Troy Johnson, founder of AALBC.com, the African American Literature Book Club. Troy, welcome.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for being here, Troy.
So Troy, tell us about AALBC.
Well, AALBC.com started in 1997, and it really started as an experiment to figure out how to make money on the web. So I decided to build a website to sell books. And as soon as I created that website, I discovered there was a tremendous amount of literature that I just wasn't aware of. Mm-hmm. I was discovering poetry and fiction and nonfiction and all types of genres, and I became my website's best customer. But readers across the country were reaching out to me and expressing gratitude, saying that they discovered authors that they were completely unaware of, and they viewed the website as a tremendous resource. And on the other side, authors reached out to me trying to connect with readers as well. And so the website has become a platform to connect readers with the books they'll enjoy the most. Actually, it's always been more than a business. It is my livelihood, but I'm quite passionate about it, and I really believe in what I'm doing and enjoy it tremendously.
Oh my gosh, wow. That is awesome.
Thank you,
That
Troy.
is so awesome. Thank you, Troy, for sharing your story. Okay, everybody, what are we talking about today?
Platonic friendships, real or get real?
What makes a marriage a marriage?
And gender roles.
Sounds like a plan. You know, folks, you don't have to read the books to join the conversation. Janelle? You won the book selection again.
I definitely did.
Oh, you thought shade? Oh my goodness.
A whole tree with a root.
Excuse me? Well, since you got all that, tell us about this book.
In An American Marriage, Tayari Jones has not only crafted a piercing tale of a man and woman plunge into tragedy, but she has also painted a deeply gut-wrenching example of the devastation of mass incarceration, the struggles and triumphs of Blackness, and the imperfect yet binding capacity of love, marriage, and family. Newlywed Celestial and Roy are the embodiment of both the American dream and the New South. Roy is a young executive, and Celestial is an artist on the brink of an exciting career. But as they settle into the routine of their life together, they are ripped apart by the circumstances neither of them could have imagined. Roy is arrested and sentenced to 12 years for a crime Celestial knows he didn't commit. Though fiercely independent, Celestial finds herself bereft and unmoored, taking comfort in Andre, her childhood friend and the best man at their wedding. As Roy's time in prison passes, she's unable to hold on to the love that has been her center. After 5 years, Roy's conviction is suddenly overturned, and he returns to Atlanta ready to resume their life together. And that's when you have to read the book to find out. An American Marriage is an intimate look deep into the souls of people who reckon with the past while trying to move forward. It makes an excellent book club pick for groups that like hot button issues and meaty discussion topics.
Right.
This is a book that will stay in your mind long after the last page is read.
Well, all right. Good background, Janelle. Well, okay. Are we ready?
Ready!
So grab your cups. It's time for the tea. All right, are we ready to get this conversation started about An American Marriage? Yes. So, we got two married folks on the set here today, but we're going to go ahead and start with you.
Oh, thank you. Well, when I looked at this book, I was conflicted and enjoyed it. So I very much understand, and there are moments where I really felt like Celestial feels, as an author, as a creative person, there are certain limitations that you don't want to have, but once you sign up for marriage, you signed up for marriage, for better or for worse. So there were moments where I was like, would I do this? Could I do this? How am I going to do this? I mean, there's some things that, like, for me, are non-negotiable. And this is a moment you should have been standing by your man, but it's also one of those moments where there shouldn't be extra parties in your marriage.
Right,
All
right.
of this best friend, it's fine. I'm not saying you cannot have a male friend or a female friend, vice versa, but everybody can't be part of the coping process. Wow. She should have had a best female friend, maybe, to confide in, as opposed to that male friend. That intimacy starts in the conversation. It doesn't always start physically. So there was too much space. They were too close in the mind.
Okay.
And once the husband was physically removed, it was easy to go out of the mind and into the body. No.
Well,
if I'm locked
you're
up,
saying,
I'm his best friend still.
We're going to throw this to the man because I got my own thing that I want to say, but so I don't get in trouble. We're going to throw this over to you, Mr. Troy. Right. Jump on in here.
One of the things that resonated with me in this novel is that it was true to life, in the sense that we all have these images of what a picture book or storybook marriage is, but these are real people, and they're flawed, and it's good to talk about flawed individuals in the context of marriage, because we all have pressures, we all are met with tragedy. This incarceration that wasn't justified at all is something that was unexpected. They're not perfect. They are flawed, and I appreciate that being reflected in this novel.
I agree with that, but I also got to tackle this part about can a man and a woman have a platonic friendship? Because clearly it states at the beginning of the novel that they had been friends since, quote unquote, childhood. Because if they're best friends, then they're best friends. So are we automatically saying that we can't have platonic friendships?
I think that question needs to be more complex. Can a man and woman be platonic friends when one of those parties are married? And what about relationships? What about someone when they're dating? Can you be in a relationship with a man and still have male friends? So there must be varying degrees of this issue. But Troy, what do you think?
You have to be able to, in the context of a marriage, have platonic relationships with people of both genders. There's just no way around it. If you're in a relationship and your significant other refuses to allow you to have male friends if you're female, or for you to have female friends, I think that's a problem. And it speaks to insecurity in a relationship, I think.
But it sounds like they need to draw boundaries. I think this is where the problem is. It's not necessarily being the friend, because I know some girlfriends that overstep their boundaries with a person that's married. Because how, as the single person, can I tell somebody that's married, girl, I wouldn't take that, and girl, why you doing that? And you've never been through that. So I think it has to go with boundaries.
Hello, I'm Tayari Jones, and I'm the author of An American Marriage. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to remind you to subscribe to The Tea for more great book discussions. Okay, let's get back to my book.
Can someone give me an example of when you're in a marriage, what is a boundary that should not be crossed? Is it someone of a gender you're attracted to being in the home when the spouse is away? Or is it a dinner? Or is it a movie night? Is it like shopping together? Dina, what do you think? Where is the line drawn?
I think people know whether or not there is some danger there. If you feel
Totally
like
agree.
your connection with that person is somehow going to violate their relationship or your relationship, it's not just a gender thing. There can be somebody that you are just not attracted to, and that's not a danger at all. I think you end up knowing. But I think another theme that's coming up is, when is a relationship successful, and what is the purpose of a marriage? I mean, is it to hold someone hostage, to to own them? No, really. really. I mean, or is it something that we create in our minds? Like, I don't think in our country we have clarity about what it means. And I say this as a single person, having from my 20s had, friends who would get married and get divorced, and I'd be crying when they'd tell me they were divorced and they were happy. And I had to examine why was I sad? And it was because they messed up my fantasy.
Right.
And some of them were, quite okay with it.
So
moving on.
Yeah. So basically, what is marriage supposed to look like in, let's say, this 21st century? What is a 21st century marriage?
Tax benefits.
Woo! I like it.
Some days that it doesn't work out all the time, but.
See, your response suggests to me what the issue is. It's a truly personal experience. No two marriages are alike, nor should they be alike. Mm-hmm. So you might be broken up because you had this idealized version of what a marriage should look like, and you're asking where are the boundaries, but those are uniquely personal decisions. So, my boundary might be at the point of sexual intercourse with someone else.
Wow. And my boundary is I don't think so. When it looks like y'all sweating too much, it's
it's time to move on.
And that's perfectly valid in the sense that this is your relationship, this is your marriage. If you're uncomfortable with your husband having a female guest at the home when you're not there, that's perfectly acceptable. But there might be another relationship where that's perfectly fine.
But shouldn't that be something that we need to be, let's be real. You learn this when you're dating. If they're coming in at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning when you're dating, don't you think they still gonna come in at 2 or 3 o'clock once you're married? So are we really not being realistic with our vision, or do we think that things are gonna change once you say I do?
I think most people believe that there is some level of things that are going to change once you say I do, because there are things where we recognize, like Janelle said, what's the difference between when you're married and when you're dating and you're committed, but I'm still single. Like, I can do what I want to do. I can break this off when I want to. Mm-hmm. So I don't necessarily have to change. And then there is this belief that now we're living this life that's communal, it's together, and this person's going to naturally change. And y'all haven't discussed, I want you to change.
You got it written all over your face.
Well, what I think is interesting in this book is that everyone's all over Celestial for, moving on with her life when she can't really live, as a married person with her husband. It's just a concept. But when they were together and he was out and free, he was the one who was stepping out and cheating on her. Woo-hoo. So we're judging her when she's just trying to have a life.
Yeah, well,
Are the expectations
he didn't
different?
change, but the thing is, he didn't change. And she was aware that he was still getting phone numbers, still playing the role. He said he never cheated, but he still was trying it to see if he still had it. And so where does that mindset change? Because you got women that do the same thing. I just need to know I still got it. Do I still got my sexy? Do I still, what is your definition? But again, I think it goes back to boundaries. How do we draw these boundaries? Because I think that's really what we can take. One of the good things that we could take away is that maybe this marriage would have lasted even with him being in prison. Because like you said, Tammy Wynette said, stand by your man. So
do I live my life by Tammy Wynette?
And there you have it.
Not in all cases, but I think this is one moment where it was justifiable. He needed to have somebody who was going to support him and support what he was going through, and not be, there is on some level when you do get married, you are conceding who you are, and unfortunately a lot of it does fall on the woman. I was slightly resistant to getting married. Like, I have to become a Lockley. I'm no longer a Murphy. I'm giving up a whole, but
that's your definition.
Right, because the hyphen wasn't gonna work for you.
No, I don't have a hyphen husband.
You don't have to change your name.
Right.
You don't?
Right.
No, you absolutely don't have to change your name.
No? Okay, come on.
And if that was an issue, you should not have. But one of the things that I thought about with this book is that if you love someone and you know you're going to go away for potentially, 12 years, 10, 12 years, that's a big ask to ask someone that you love to put your life essentially on hold, waiting for me to come out potentially in 10 years.
Right.
And indeed, he gave Celestial at some point kind of permission to go on with her life. Now, that's a big sacrifice for himself, but it was a bad situation. And I would, if I was married and that was in my situation, I would reluctantly, I wouldn't enjoy it, but I would give my wife an out. And if she then chose to stand by her man, as you say, beautiful. But if she wanted to move on with her life, I would perfectly understand that. But that's my personal expression. Other people will feel differently.
Right.
And she didn't abandon him.
No.
Even, she was there for him. Her family was still paying for his defense.
Yes.
So, I mean, my goodness, that's pretty committed. So she didn't necessarily want to continue the part of the marriage, which he could not participate in, but she was still there for him.
I have to agree. Well, I think we've kind of explored these things about where the man fits. So that kind of, and where the woman fits. So that kind of leads us into gender roles. Gender roles, especially as a woman from the South. I recognized some things that I thought was really cool because in the South, a man is taught, you take care of the wife, you take care of the house, you take care of this, you take care of that. The woman is just supposed to do. Now, I saw that heavily in here because one line that stood out to me the most is when he said, when you wanted to start the doll business per se, you didn't have to say anything. I showed you I love you by going out and making that happen. So what happens when you don't tell somebody verbally that you love them, especially if we're talking about being gender specific here?
I mean, people, I think, receive and show love different ways. I mean, there's a book about that.
And there you have it.
But also, there are a lot of different types of relationships as well. I mean, today you hear about open relationships, you hear about polygamous relationships, and those, I'm sure, are ways. In those relationships, you have to show that you love those people in different ways. So it's challenging. And I think we can't define anybody's relationships or parameters of those marriages ourselves. That's something that is only for those couples or those groups.
Yes, but they have to have a way to, I think kind of what Deborah's saying though is, how is that communicated? When you have this idea of what it means to show love, demonstrate love, or say that, and the other person has these different ideals and you don't communicate or you don't share what you're actually doing until after the fact. Like he's later on saying, now, I did all this work to sit you down. Those were his words, like to sit you down, to show you that I love you. And I think slightly I felt like it was almost a backhanded compliment too at the same time, because he's like, I don't want you to work, I just want you to do these dolls. And that was her work. So she was like, where you at with that, brother? I think that it was a meaningful gesture for him, though, and it was him saying that he loved her. And sometimes we want to hear it, and we don't recognize people are saying a lot of things, but their actions are not aligned with what they're saying. Anybody can say, I love you, but it's an action. You have to do it. And how I accept it is, very different. But that's a conversation you have to have and not wait until, and I think this is part of what makes it an American marriage. We have the tendency to wait until it's a tragedy to want to say, this is wrong, this is broken, this is what I meant, we wait until it's like, we're falling apart.
We're reactive as opposed to being proactive. Yep.
There's something my father's always said in that before a couple gets married, they should go to marriage counseling. Why wait until you're years in or until abuse happens for you to seek help? You should actively make sure you're having these conversations. And before you even get married, just check in to see, is this where we want to go? Are we going towards the right step that's for us, rather than just going to this American marriage that we so often dream about?
The fantasy.
Yes.
The fantasy. As
Buy
opposed
in.
And their relationship, I mean, the time that they got to spend together was less than the time that they spent apart.
Right.
So,
Yes.
I mean, it's not what they were expecting, I'm sure.
Not at
or
all.
What marriage is.
Perhaps marriages aren't designed to last forever.
Complete. Conscious complete.
In a sense that, people change, people grow, people evolve, people do any number of things, and life circumstances may make it more reasonable for people to separate. The idea, clearly a lifelong marriage is not something that's working in America. The vast majorities of marriages do not last, And maybe that is just a consequence of us being human. I mean,
and I have to disagree because I guess I look at my parents, and
what
that
do you
might be
disagree
why
with? The marriages end,
that
or
marriages aren't meant to last. But I think it goes all the way back to they're not communicating before they're getting married. I think that we are getting married off the fantasy, and maybe because I did see my parents married 32 years before my father passed, that I have a different view of what marriage is. And I think with all the broken families, with all these single parents, single family homes, people don't know the fight that they have to go through.
And I don't think that my lifestyle is any worse than somebody who's married. I see lots of people who's married don't want their lives.
Abusive,
But even if
toxic.
they're not abusive, they're not, it's not what I want.
Right.
When
And
I'm
that-
looking
that's
at
where
them,
I
so
was
just because
going.
they're married for
Yeah.
years doesn't
Right.
mean your life
doesn't
is
make,
better.
yeah.
But I think it
make
also
it.
goes back to something Dina said earlier, which is what is the purpose? Why are you entering into this marriage? And I'm not saying this as the expert. I'm married, and that makes me the expert by default. But it's not the expert. Like I didn't have. We
Can't
didn't
sell
have
tickets to your show.
Y'all be asking for a refund quick. We didn't have premarital counseling. We didn't have a conversation. We didn't have what do you want. We met at a club. Listen.
Yep.
So we didn't have all of the foundation building. So I'm saying this looking backwards, 2020. You need to have figured out why you guys are doing it. And just like in other countries, some people, they get married for monetary reasons. They get married for the status, and then they have a reason to stay together. Because we don't always enter in purpose, with purpose, on purpose. There's nothing that we are fighting for. There's nothing that we want to stay for. And even sometimes the things that we call love, like, I was drunk a lot when I first met my husband. I don't know,
I
the
cannot.
things that we call love, later on, you redefine that for
Right,
yourself. You
right,
redefine
right.
that in life. So what they're staying together for, what they're fighting for, we don't always have that established before we enter.
And I totally agree. And I think that's probably where we're going with an American marriage, is that there are different levels of learning from every life experience, because we go from somebody that was best friends with somebody, the best man at the wedding, and now y'all getting it in?
It was always there. It was always resting there, the way that they respond to each other. Because when you are in love, when you have that soul tie, there's a way that you respond
That's true.
to the person. And that was always evident to me, him being at her beck and call, the way that he was always by her side, her being in his bedroom all the time on the campus in a
Let's take it here then. Because we said, can we be in a platonic relationship? So in other words, can we still be friends with the person that we break up with or that we've had relationship with? Do we think that's where the problem comes up? Because when intimacy or sex jumps in, does that change?
well, there's no one size fits all. I mean,
Okay.
there are guidelines. I mean, clearly in that circumstance, that wasn't, they couldn't that couldn't happen. In other words, in this relationship, in this novel, that didn't work, obviously.
Right.
But there can be other circumstances where it can work. Now, I'm not an expert in marriage either, but I'm perhaps an expert in my own relationship.
Right.
And being married 27 years and having raised 2 children to adulthood who are now out on their own, I can speak with a great amount of clarity and experience about the nature of relationships and how they change over time. And, some dudes you don't want around your wife, others are not a problem.
Right.
And you have to know, and you don't necessarily have to have that conversation.
Right.
And my wife has actually told me about people, for example, that, you got to watch this one. And, it might have been oblivious to me, and it turns out, yeah, maybe she was right. I mean, and that comes from a closeness, that comes from time. And it's kind of hard to describe to someone who isn't married or has never been married, or maybe has only been married for 10, 15 years. But once you've been married for a minute, there are a lot of things that you don't necessarily have to communicate verbally because you can demonstrate them. In other words, I forgot who said it, but you can demonstrate love by behavior. Someone can lie to you and say, yeah, I love you.
And then, stop lying.
and then be out in the street doing something completely
Right,
different.
right.
Of course,
Where the
yeah.
brother that's going to work every day and making sure his kids and his family is is protected and supported and is not sleeping around, but never said, I love you. There are ways of expressing that love, and I think, sometimes that takes time to recognize.
Hey, think one of your friends would like this?
Share it right now and keep the conversation going and growing.
Hey, this is your book club,
If you want to be part of this conversation,
Jump into the comments below.
and we'll be there to talk to you.
Get your friends in on the conversation.
like, share, comment, and subscribe.
Who's telling your story?
We are
The Tea.
The Tea.
the Tea.
Now let's get back to the show.
I do believe we can agree that an American marriage fits our theme for this month.
Romance.
And if you would like to purchase this book, you can always visit Mr. Troy Johnson's website, aalbc.com. We really appreciate you clicking in, and we hope you will help keep the conversation going and growing by subscribing and commenting on our YouTube channel and liking our Facebook page. See our new videos every Thursday morning, and remember, who's telling your story? The Tea!